So now it's time to take a question and comments from the audience. Do you have any question or comments, please?
Thank you guys very much for your presentations. I enjoyed them very much. Something that came to mind whenever you guys were presenting, particularly the practitioners, was in my mind, I don't know where this image came from, but I often think of practitioners and other organizational entities as well, taking advice oftentimes from academia as to imply a direction of information from one to the other. But to me, it has always seemed a bit like it should be not the other way around, but it should be kind of equal in the sense that academics should take advice from practitioners because the practitioners know what's actually happening on the ground versus what's happening theoretically or what is technically probably, hopefully true. So I wanted to know, especially from the practitioners, anybody can answer this, but what do you think the state is? What do you think the direction is right now from between the two, academia and practitioners? Do you think the direction right now is mostly academia to practitioners, like mostly practitioners are listening to academics? Or do you think it's a very mutual conversation? Or do you think that, and also what do you think it should be versus what it is now?
Thank you very much for the very good questions. So please answer.
He has the microphone.
So let me do it first.
Yeah.
From our experience in ASEAN's Center for Energy, what is happening is case by case. Sometimes we took advice from the academic institution, but sometimes the academic institution came to our office and asked for advice, what kind of research is priority. So to prevent this case by case, and maybe we can do something better in the future. So that's why we need a network, a formalized network, a platform for us to able to share not only from our side, but also from them sides to make a balance in terms of advising each other. Because of course, it's not coming from academic side only, not coming from our side only, should be coming from both because we don't know. It's a dynamic environment, especially energy. It's very huge. So by this formalized framework, I think it will become a better advising practice, as you said. I do agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because I'm a bit older than him, I talk to you from the perspective of what I have seen over time. There really was a time when there was something called academic research and something called practice, with difficulties in some situations to link the two. I think that has largely disappeared today. Well, there is no research that doesn't learn from practice, and no good practice, if I may say so, that doesn't learn from research. They go hand in hand today. And I read many publications in the areas of interest, of course, and I see a very direct link between academic and academic work and practice. Even inside FL, I joined in 97. I don't know if you were born at that time. I'm joking, of course. The point is that we used to talk about normative work and field work at that time. That has disappeared because there is no normative work that doesn't contribute to field work, and there is no field work that is useful if it doesn't bring knowledge to the normative work. The two must be parts of the same coin, two sides of the same coin, so you don't separate them. So my experience, not only from FL, But from the overall, development in academic research and practice, what I see is that they are much more closely linked today than they used to be 20, 25 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you.
How about?
It's a very difficult topic because if you think about your scientist or researcher, your topic is very, very narrow, right? So you're a specialist. And then you cannot say anything about a different topic. But our graduate school, we allow you to do some different thing that you're doing one aspect. That is the uniqueness of the GSAIS, right? So that's why we created kind of a new survivability study. Because to meet with the need of the UN or the global trend moving. And for example, saying about SDGs, what I feel with working with UN many years, that UN has a very strong motivation driven by the government and also the international discussion, right? And you have to follow the trend because if the globe is moving for the climate change adaptation, then we have to do something related to do that, and food reduction, and many, many different topics. But the research, as a researcher, you should be free-minded, right? So free-minded. So you have to discover what is right and what is wrong. Sometimes they don't match. It's true. However, I think the mission of the scientists is try to discover the truth, to adapt the goal of the international society is looking for, how to provide the truth and find the best answer. That's what I think. How can academic sector can contribute for solving the global issue, right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So do you have any additional comments or questions?
Thank you. Very, very interesting question and also very nice discussion. I think all of us realizing the importance of connectivity between academician, researcher, as well as the policymakers and also particles business parts. And then in terms of the academician and also politician, there is a very interesting saying. Researcher or academician, they cannot lie, but you can make mistake. But politician, the other way around. they cannot make mistake, but they can lie. So there's truly the opposite, as you mentioned, Charles. The coins, but the coin is two different sides. But the interesting thing here is that we have to try to fill the gap between telling the truth, but also not making mistakes. Yeah, because as we presented throughout the day, the problem is there. The problem is there, and how we fill the gap together, we can.
Thank you very much. Do you have any comments? It's okay.
I don't know if this is right or not. Actually, when we are trying to promote the false food loss material to the young generation, we have a difficulty, for example, the moving one direction to other. For example, there is already a written agreement that global warming is it's a logical thing because the global warming is a scientific consequence. However, when you publish some material, it is already determined truth, right? So there is no room that you can doubt that description. And then when you do some movement, like a food loss and some like a SDG goal to halve the poverty, something, and there is a clear direction to do one direction, and there is no sufficient discussion why this has been done, because the sufficient discussion has already been accomplished with many, many experts, right? So we show the results to the public, right? So sometimes that make it difficult for young scientists. Why you conclude like this way to this way, right? Why SDG goal is determined, why you have to eliminate those kind of water scarcity. Why? And there is a huge discussion. So the huge discussion has already accomplished. However, when you publish something, it is determined truth. And that difference we face sometimes between, like you are saying, the lying or like a mistake, something. But we have already discussed and we determine one thing, but when you make action, you have to think this is true. You have to believe this is true. But sometimes that it become, in the long run, it was wrong or something, right? Like a pesticide or carbon dioxide, many different things. But we have to think the difference between the policy and the science with this, what you're saying.
Right? I think that's a very interesting point. In FAO, we have such a thing as the Committee of Food for World Food Security, CFS we call it. And if you look at the way, and this is about minimizing mistakes, but this point is more about ownership, but the two can be linked one way or the other. I think the way to go is partnership. And SDG 17 is there precisely for us to make sure that ownership is shared, but also that mistakes are minimized, because we can harness knowledge from all parties. And once we have reached that point, we can have shared ownership of decisions that we take. The Committee on World Food Security works that way precisely. It's probably one of the most inclusive, UN committees that I've ever seen. You will find private companies, you'll find NGOs, you'll find other UN organizations, you find governments, etc. So everybody is in there. So the knowledge that we develop, basically it comes from the discussions of CFS and the orientations that come from there. And we develop most of the publications based on the agreement reached by this very diverse and extremely inclusive committee that meets once a year. I think that is fundamental. So it's partnership, again, to conclude, is meant not only to harness, the knowledge and minimize errors, but it's meant also to facilitate ownership of the decisions that we take. Thanks.
Thank you very much. It's a very good comment. Please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to make a comment on the question about the communication between the practitioner and the academia. Since I'm coming from the practitioner, so I felt a little bit responsible to say something about that aspect. I presented the new program which started around 2008, the SATREPS program, which is the supporting the joint research between the developed countries and the developing countries. And the JICA is responsible for the implementation of that project. And I am very favored to that program, but to tell the truth, there is a huge frustration among my fellow colleagues. There are a lot of criticism among my fellow colleagues. They are claiming that I hesitate a little bit to express. They are saying they are complaining that the academics are not only, but they are very interested in producing the academic results, but the distance between the academic result to the use of these knowledge or technology is very far. So the papers are produced, or the conference, etc., are held, but the the JICA staff who are involved, they can't see how these knowledge will be used to change the reality. So that is very different from our ordinary general programs. We are working in a more general areas to change the systems or the training of the people, etc., etc. But myself, I am feeling that there are variety, there are large range of the research which deal with the basic fundamental research subject as well as more applied areas. So today I'm very impressed that many of the students are dealing with a very practical or the real world issue, such as the waste of the food, etc., etc. Maybe this might be a little bit the new aspects, the recent aspect. But at the same time, the fundamental research, the basic research is very important. That kind of the basic research may or have the possibility to change, to produce the fundamental innovation. So we have to do the both, the basic research and the more applied research. So maybe the practitioner have to be a little bit more patient to work with the academics for the promotion of the basic research. But I would like to ask also the academic people to situate their basic research in the perspective of the development, even though the distance before the utilization of the knowledge of the output is very far, their research have to be situated well in the current issue of the developing countries, because people are suffering there. The problem is existing there. So even though the distance of between these issues and the output of academic research is very far, it is very important to see their research within the vision, not only the papers, academic papers. So I'm always saying to my colleagues, we have to be more patient, but there are many discussions within JICA. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So the time is a little bit coming, so finally, please.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this symposium. And I come from a educational sociology and philosophy background, so I like to ask some questions regarding to those two aspects. First of all, that from a sociological perspective, that we see how the world becomes the way that it is today. It really depends on the colonization and the exploitation of underground resource. In other words, basically, the progress or the development was based on add-on or exploitations. And so we got to this point that the world is so developed, but however, when the places that were not colonized, they were able to self-sustain. And my question is, so from my first question is that today we talk a lot about these sustainable issues from a natural science perspective, but if we think from a sociological perspective, while we might aid these developing countries with more advanced technologies, we might be able to reach those goals, but isn't that exploitation, that structure or relationship of exploitation, or that structure of reliance or dependency still there? That's my first question. And if that structure is still there, can we really change the nature of how the world is not sustainable? And my second question is, from a philosophy perspective, Frankfurt School has this pretty famous critic on science and technology that they claim that Enlightenment demystified myths, but however, it become myth itself. By saying becoming myth itself, it's claiming that it has a lot of domination over the nature and such. So from a philosophy of science perspective,
please shorten your question.
Yeah. is this a claim being recognized in your work? Or if it is being recognized, how is it being addressed? Thank you.
Thank you for the very interesting questions. When addressing this or developing the energy sector, we have to consider the uniqueness of a country. When we go to Myanmar, we cannot do the approach the same way we do in Indonesia because of the uniqueness of the country. By this point of view, in any kind of development, especially in energy, we do different things. Because, for example, like in Myanmar, the most challenging part is the rural electrification. It's currently only around 60%. This means the people there still needs kind of very primary needs compared to other countries. So, to answer your questions, yes, we are very related with the nature, but sometimes there is something that's very important with our humanity requirements, like education, food, poverty, which is in energy sector is very related with our energy access. So, but by considering the technology development, of course, we have this kind of SDG to guide us in future development, more advanced development. We have to know and also consider the environment. By this kind of perspective, there is a dilemma. Policymakers sometimes often arguing about we choose the people, the urgency first, or choose the environment. We go for the coal first because it's an abundant resource, or we go for renewable energy, but renewable energy is not yet ready for the system. It's always chicken and egg and always bringing debates. But of course, together we can, as mentioned by Dr. Nuki, this is the involvement of academic institutions, the involvement of practitioners or any kind of organization, because our goal is just the same. No one left behind. I think this is our point of view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So unfortunately, the time is coming. Thank you for the presentation today. And then I'm wondering that we need a more correlation between the practices and academia. And then in order to that, I believe that the respect to the others are very important, from the practitioner to the academia, and then the academia and to practitioner, both sides need the respect. That might be the very important, I think. Thank you very much.